at the same venue, but I would have to put this down as possibly the most historic one for many, many reasons. 2019 is Ed Hillary's 100th birth anniversary. Um, he's very well known in India, around the world as well, but for Indians, Everest is something which has always struck the imagination. I did a quick Google check and that how far are we from the summit of Everest, and it showed up at 960 kilometers. It's not that far. So we're not that far from Everest. We are not very far from the New Zealand High Commission, where Ed was there for many years. He was serving as the ambassador here for India and Nepal. He used to all the way be around at talks. He was very, very forthcoming. It's great Peter is here. Peter is just coming back from a climbing trip in Nepal, and I'm really happy that he's here, because I think this occasion we cannot really celebrate without somebody from the family, and nobody is representing the legacy better than Peter. I think from our own family point of view, my father, Captain Kohli, and Ed were really good close friends, and my father couldn't come. He's 89 now. He was a bit resting. But I asked him that what are your recollections of Edmund and what should we just think about. So he said that the favorite time for him was a 3-4 year period when he used to live in Sydney. Edmund Hillary used to come for talks in Sydney quite often, and whoever approached him that he wants to give a talk in Sydney, he would normally say, contact Mohan Kohli. So father would arrange the talk. He would stay at our house, and I used to get kicked out of my room because he's coming. I was only 11 at that stage, but didn't really know that much about him. Father would drive him, and then in the evening when they would get back, my mom was responsible for getting his dinner organized. And he said, I have only one issue which bothers me, and that is seafood. But I love Indian curries, and he would relish that. And that cycle would, I think he did over 25 trips at Sydney with us. And then where I got into the picture was that I was applying for my MBA in the US, and I needed some recommendations, and Edmund Hillary sitting there, and I'm wondering, is this possible? And so he gave a nice recommendation which eventually helped out. So, it's Edmund Hillary is something which we'll always remember for forever. And so today our objective was to just kind of recollect all his achievements, and Peter's going to just articulate that over the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes. Throw in some nice videos of his which he's collected, and I'd just like to say a few words about Peter. We've known him for many years. He's been coming to India for many expeditions. He was part of the several expeditions in India. Right now, when I chatted with him, his focus is on getting his kids up and climbing, which is nice because that's how he kind of got going through Ed's support, and he's kind of doing the same thing for his children. So it's really nice to see. He's also an Everest summiter, and he's done a lot over the years himself. So I'm leaving it now to Peter to kind of take us through the last few years and tell us about Ed and other things.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's wonderful to be here, and I've got my audio-visual assistant here ready to show you some little videos at various points during the presentation. But Meninda, you've really reminded me, perhaps the most important thing about the mountains, it is the friendships. It's the people you meet, the experiences you share with them. And it's true, between the Kohli and the Hillary families, we've had some great times. They haven't always been in the Himalayas, as Meninda pointed out. They were often, at hilarious parties in a place like Sydney, Australia, with a whole group of adventurers, eating good food, drinking wine, and telling stories. It's not a bad thing to do, is it? But look, I want to talk to you a little bit about my experiences with my father. This year is 100 years since he was born. And it's a pretty extraordinary legacy because in some respects, that legacy carries on as strong as ever. I mean, the things that he did with his life were really quite remarkable. And I remember, just as a small kid growing up in the Hillary family. And you know, there were 5 of us, 3 of us children and my parents. And we're sitting around the dining room table. We always had quite a formal sit-down dinner together. And, you know, I mean, we'd talk about what, you know, our day had been at school or something like that. But I think the important thing to note here is that my father, you know, he had all these incredible stories, but he didn't particularly just want to sit down and talk about what he had done in the past. He was a man who was interested in what we're doing now and planning for the future. That was very much his focus. But every so often, that sort of unwritten rule was broken. And it was generally because, I don't know, there was a visiting Indian mountaineer or American mountaineer or someone else with that sort of interest at our dining room table. And of course, they inevitably would say, "Well, Ed, tell us about that last day heading up for the summit of Mount Everest." And so Dad would talk about it, wriggling out of that little tent at their Camp 9 up there at, I don't know, 8,500 meters or whatever it was, and lashing out for the top. And, you know, you imagine us as small children, you know, sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age, listening to our father and saying that he had his great big wooden ice axe and he's chopping these great bucket-like steps in the steep icy slope leading up to the south summit of Mount Everest. And, you know, we kids are captivated. We're just actually watching him in awe. And then he said, as he and Tenzing got up just below the south summit, as he cut these steps, he said, the slope seemed incredibly unstable. Great sheets of snow and ice would slide off and disappear down into the Kangshung Glacier.